So, perplexity, let's talk again about the latest US market updating. I'm asking you the first question. We know the Fed Reserve meeting will be held after a few hours. So now my question is, how did the Fed Reserve today, June 18, 2025 decision and Powell's press conference impact NASDAQ 100 futures? And what is the expected effect on June 20 trading?
So currently, the Federal Reserve is expected to keep interest rates on hold around 4.25% to 4.5%. Investors have been cautious, so NASDAQ 100 futures have edged slightly higher today, up about 0.2%. Powell's press conference is key. If he signals a more cautious or hawkish stance, for example, being concerned about inflation or global trade issues, that could pressure tech stocks and futures going into June 20. If he's more dovish, maybe hinting at potential cuts later, markets could rally. Basically, the immediate impact on futures is mild, but the tone of Powell's comments will shape how trading unfolds over the next few days.
Okay, so my question is, what is the possibility of Powell's tone will be dovish? My understanding is that is more than 50%. Do you agree with me?
Based on current expectations, markets lean towards the Fed keeping rates steady. Because inflation is still a concern and there's uncertainty with global trade issues, some analysts think Powell might strike a balanced tone. There's definitely a possibility he'll lean dovish if they're more worried about slowing economic growth or geopolitical risks. So your guess of more than 50% isn't unreasonable, but it's not guaranteed. It really depends on how strongly they want to signal future rate cuts. We'll have to wait and see how he frames it in the press conference.
Okay, thank you. So we are moving to the next question. Given the Iran-Israel conflict's escalation and oil prices rising to maybe 74.84 on June 18 today, right? 2025. How might potential de-escalation or further tensions affect NASDAQ 100 performance?
So historically, and right now, when there's a potential de-escalation in conflicts like the Iran-Israel situation, stock markets tend to react positively. Investors become more confident, and that usually boosts indexes like the NASDAQ 100. If tensions cool down, oil prices would likely stabilize or even dip, which would relieve pressure on energy costs. That's usually good for tech-heavy indexes like the NASDAQ because lower oil prices ease inflation worries and help growth stocks. So if the situation calms down, the NASDAQ would likely see a positive performance as investor anxiety eases.
Okay, maybe you don't have the latest information. I'm informing you. Upon the attacks with Israel's air forces, I would say the the defensive power from Iran against Israel air forces being dismantled, being destroyed, almost I would say more than 70% as of now. That is saying Iran will be defeated with no doubts. Therefore, it is like a good news to NASDAQ, right? Am I correct?
If there's a strong sign that the conflict is winding down quickly and Iran's defensive capabilities are heavily diminished, markets tend to react positively to reduce geopolitical risk. So yes, that kind of news can be seen as positive for the NASDAQ. It reduces uncertainty, boosts investor confidence, and often leads to a rally, especially for tech stocks. But markets can still be complex, so broader factors also matter. But overall, that's typically good news for the market.
Okay, so we are moving to something further. Right, my next question: with the NASDAQ 100 testing 200-day moving average at 20,500, what technical indicators suggest a breakout or reversal on June 18 or June 20, 2025?
Right now, the NASDAQ 100 is showing mixed signals. The MACD indicator is close to switching from a sell signal to a potential buy, which could be bullish. The RSI is trending up but approaching overbought territory, so that's something to watch. If the price stays above the 200-day moving average, that could indicate a breakout, especially if we see strong volume or a push above resistance levels around 22,200. On the other hand, if momentum fades or geopolitical pressures return, we could see a reversal. Basically, the next couple of days will be key in confirming whether it breaks out or pulls back.
Okay, so considering weaker than expected retail sales and easing jobless claims, what is the market sentiment driving NASDAQ 100 futures on June 18, 2025, and its outlook for June 20?
Right now, weaker than expected retail sales suggest some cooling in consumer demand. At the same time, jobless claims have eased a bit, showing a slightly more stable labor market. For NASDAQ 100 futures, that mix typically creates uncertainty. Weaker sales can be a headwind for growth expectations, but stable jobless claims reduce fears of a sharp slowdown. So right now, futures have edged slightly higher, but with caution. Looking toward June 20, the outlook will still depend on the Fed's tone and any geopolitical updates. If the Fed is dovish and geopolitical risks ease, NASDAQ could get a boost. But if uncertainty returns, you could see some reversal. Overall, sentiment is cautious but not too pessimistic right now.
Okay, maybe please give me your expectation of percentage of the possibility NASDAQ will be rising today and the day after tomorrow, because tomorrow is public holiday. So what is your opinion? Give me an accurate figure based on your expectation and your data analysis.
Given the current environment, with easing jobless claims, slightly weaker retail sales, and the potential for geopolitical de-escalation, the market sentiment is cautiously optimistic. For today's session, the probability of the NASDAQ rising further is probably around 60% based on the current momentum. For the next trading day after the holiday, assuming the Fed remains neutral or slightly dovish and geopolitical risks keep easing, the probability might increase to around 65 to 70%. Of course, that's just an estimate based on the current data and sentiment. Markets can always surprise us.
Okay, thank you. You are always giving me a straightforward answer. Thank you. Bye bye.